Welcome to BCS, the Chartered Institute for IT. This live webinar is about the IT skills gap, something that we've heard a lot about, but we're going to learn today is necessarily an ongoing thing. We'd like you to be involved if you would put questions to the panel. Much appreciated. There's a hashtag, BCS webinar. Use that on Twitter and put your questions. The recent media has had many articles about gaps in different areas. Let me read a recent list. Web development, user interface design, digital marketing, data science, big data specialists, security experts, analytics experts, next generation infrastructure. That's a not exhaustive list of recent media coverage on skills gaps areas, so it's very much a current thing. To discuss that, we have three experts with us. Chris Shaw from Intel, Sara Hill from Capability Jane, and Philip Black from Emergn. So welcome and thank you for speaking to us today. We're going to ask a first question perhaps for you, Chris, please. From your perspective, where are the gaps in IT skills?
It's interesting you listed out all the different roles where people are identifying we have gaps within the industry. They're all very hard skill focused, very technical skill focused. I think one of the things that's emerging for me, particularly over the last few years, is the importance of softer skills, things like business relationship management. IT is trying to move from being a purely service-oriented organisation to a partnership with the business. To be able to do that effectively, you need to foster those relationships so that you can have an influence on business strategy. And so we're really looking in Intel at the moment to build skills where we see it and bring some skills in from business units as well to augment that, because that's where we're seeing a big gap for IT in Intel.
Okay. Sarah.
I'd love to sort of comment on that, because you say you're looking internally as well at those business relationship skills, which when you look internally, it's often reasonably straightforward to do because you sort of base it on competencies. But often what happens is organisations go out to market, and when they go out to market, it's sort of a bit of a computer process going out to market with a recruitment specification. Yeah. And invariably these specifications are really technical. And we've done quite a lot of work actually unpicking job specifications for technology roles. And we've gone there with the hiring managers and say, just tell us exactly what it is you're looking for. And as you said, exactly that. You know, it's really, a lot of it is around business relationship management skills, but that's not what the job specification says. And so really a kind of a key message here is that if these are the sorts of skills that we're looking for, we've got to really seriously analyse the way that we're going out to market and the way that we're packaging up our job specifications to make sure that actually that's what we're articulating, and then removing some of those critical, where we say essential criteria, because that's eliminating a significant, particularly women. Women will not apply, and actually there's loads of data around, but for technology roles, women won't apply specifically for technology roles unless 100% of the criteria are ticked. And so if they feel that actually technical skills are paramount, which they typically are on most technical job specs, they will pull themselves out. So you're losing that talent of business relationship management skills.
Excellent. Interesting. Philip.
Yeah, and just to add a little bit about that business relationship management, in our area we very much focus on agile education, lean methods, product development style education. And what we found over the last 3 to 5 years is the explosion in job adverts requesting agile skills, right? It's almost like no other developers exist anymore. They have to be an agile Java developer, or they have to be an agile project manager. And really, it's a recognition of the missing gap between technology and the business. They're looking for developers who have design skills. They're looking for developers who can engage with a real customer, a real live human being, which has not traditionally been the IT viewpoint. So whilst all of these soft skills are very much in demand, it is growing. Some of these studies looking at the explosion in job adverts was saying like 50, 75%, 100% explosion in that sort of request. The marketplace isn't keeping pace with the request for those type of skills. But we can't forget the technical skills as well. There's been a massive trend in the industry over the last 20 years of outsourcing the most junior roles.
Yes.
Which means that we have got rid of all of those technical skills that you need at the bottom in order to grow to the top, if you like, of a very hierarchical organisation. The fact that that's happened means that we actually don't have some of the technical leadership skills we require in this country. And we're seeing that I see that sort of every day, every week within my clients, because, you know, they're having to rely on people in India or China or Russia or wherever it happens to be, where we've got the lower cost base folks. What that does is actually puts pressure on sourcing, resource management type skills, partnering type skills, whereby we're asking people within inside organizations to manage technical skills, but they don't have the background to be able to effectively guide and coach their supply chain particularly well. So it's fairly holistic, and that removal of the technical skills at the bottom of people coming out of school is creating a gulf between the technical leadership skills we need today in this country.
Okay. On Sarah's point, I already had a tweet in somebody else unpicking job specifications in the information and knowledge management sector, much as yourself. So we're getting some empathy there.
It's very interesting if you actually to analyse the percentage. So we had a panel where we took a pool of job specifications that would be your typical, you know, Java development, you know, agile Java development specifications. And then we actually took a group of CVs and people, and we presented those to the hiring managers, and they said, oh, I'll have that one, that one, that one, and that one. We said, well, actually, 60% of those people that you've chosen don't tick these specifications because, you know, your criteria are very rigid on the technical side. So it's a big issue.
So with that in mind, if we're not getting what we need, perhaps from job ads or perhaps even CVs, how do we go about identifying where the talent gaps are, particularly as we look to the future of our organisations?
I think there are a number of different ways in which you can look at this. Something we've been looking at is around talent management philosophy. So we look at where we have bench strength in certain capabilities or functions within the organisation, and then we almost assess the organisation in terms of the strength of capability that we have there. We have job specifications that are very clear with regards to what level of skill is depicted at certain levels of seniority. And we can therefore quite easily identify where we do have gaps in that structure, because you need a broad range of talent in that space. But then you need to also augment it with identifying what you need more in the future. And the future piece, we have struggled at Intel maybe internally, just looking internally. So over the last couple of years, we've tried to reach out to industry bodies to participate in activities like this, to seek some input about what is changing out there in the marketplace. Some of our market is changing with it as well, and that's influencing us. One of the roles you talked about earlier was around digital marketing. About a third of my organisation are involved in digital marketing. But the role that they're doing today and maybe yesterday was web development, publishing code onto websites, etc. Now the demand is there when we look across all the different countries and all the different cultures that we work with. How do we take advantage of digital media to reach the audience that we're looking at? And it could be social media. And then you find out that in places like China, you don't have access really to Google, you don't have Twitter, you don't have Facebook. They use capabilities like WeChat. So how do we have the awareness that that's out there, and how do we bring in talent that can utilize those platforms and those environments to be able to go and reach the customer in a new way compared to what we were trying to do in the old way, which was just these flat websites with content and hoping that people would at some point land on our site and engage with us.
Yes.
I think there's two ways to look at this as well. One is very role specific. I mean, there's frameworks like Sophia that look at different grades of people within different roles. So that's fine. I think many organisations kind of get a very role-based view of the world, but if we're starting to look at capability based, there's been more advancements in things like programming language, platforms such as Twitter, Facebook, social media over the last few years just look back over a decade, you know, iPhones didn't really exist. iPads certainly didn't. These things are accelerating now at a faster pace than ever before. We are exploding in here. And actually what we need to be doing is looking at the capability of meta skills. So learning about learning. We need to encourage these organizations to continue their learning cycle. You know, so there's many people that we come across within organizations who are kind of still very much in the mainframe, large application development space. They don't really understand what app development could look like, might look like, you know, what some of these small startup companies in the entrepreneurial space that are disrupting businesses are doing. And it's how do we bridge that gap and start looking at how people learn about new technologies quickly throughout the organization.
Okay. Now I had a question down here about getting a balance between talent management and targeted recruitment, and the comment was made when we were chatting earlier that perhaps these things are essentially the same thing. So perhaps the question I'll rephrase that as is, do we look enough internally to develop those that are in our organisations to help them fill the gaps that we've assessed?
There's in our talent management process, we've got what we identify as 4 key dilemmas about our approach. And one of them is around buy versus build talent. And historically, I would say my organisation has looked predominantly at building talent. So we're recruiting as college graduates with an intern pipeline as well, to then build their skills internally within the organisation, expose them to different departments as well, and potentially build careers. What we have shifted though is we've shifted a little bit over to include some buying in of talent, because you can't necessarily build sometimes at the pace to address the problem that you have today. And you might need some catalysts within the organisation, some key talent that you bring in that actually drives your organisation's development faster. We've done it in places such as user experience, UX, because it was something that whilst lots of people pat themselves on the back and say that they appreciate it and that they're good at it, there is actually a skill and there is a particular focus that can be brought by talented individuals in that space. So I think it's about finding the balance. I would still love to build as much talent as I can within the organisation, but I'd say it's probably now in the 90-10 mix of build versus buy, and maybe even shift to the 80-20 space, but possibly not much more than that for what we're looking at. Okay.
What's your perspective on that, Sarah, being in the recruitment area?
In the recruitment area, well, I think, I mean, this is such a big question, and organisations face it in so many different ways. I think what strikes me, sort of coming to the sort of merging the talent management with the future skills gap, what strikes me in an entrepreneurial business, if you were to start up a company, you would start with a strategy, and you would start with your product and your proposition. And then you would build out your people, you know, your structure, process, people. And what strikes me in our global organisations is that there seems to be a bit of a disconnect between ultimately the business strategy and then what the people requirements. And I don't know where this disconnect happens, but whether it happens at the boardroom a table or whether it happens lower down, but there is a disconnect between actually, and that's how you work out where your future skills gaps need to be, is understanding what's our 5-year strategy, and then working and filtering that down. So that's one comment on the kind of the gap and how organisations. I think that there's a need to link the business strategy with people strategy, with IT strategy, and then my second sort of thought is around the build versus buy piece. What we see is it's a lot easier to go to market and buy, but actually, if you take a look at how much it's cost you to buy, nurture, invest in, and build. It's a lot. Not a lot of organisations really properly understand that the value of the sort of how do we want to package this? The kind of economic value of the investment that they've made, and so therefore it's a very easy, quick thing to do, to go out to market and get that talent in. And we recently did a survey in technology, and we found that particularly actually for women, 52% of women were really interested in upskilling to a different type of skill set or retraining. So you have a latent population of women and men in your organisation that are actually really open to invest in themselves and be invested in new skills. So I guess I would challenge organisations to really properly understand, actually, have those conversations. Are they embedded in their talent management process? You know, are they embedded in your everyday kind of performance management processes? To have conversations around, well, let's think laterally. I give you permission to think laterally about, you know, are you open to jumping into something completely new?
Yeah, I think the one thing I would add, listening to that as well, is the build versus buy scenario. In many cases where people are trying to buy in talent, they're looking for the quick fix, and actually the economic value, they don't consider even things, the softer side of things, which like cultural fit. And you know, often we're seeing very senior roles coming into organisations, like the expectation on these people is huge to turn around, you know, wow, we're going to generate new products and services or new customer experiences, we're going to become a digital online business. Those sorts of expectations are massive on these people, and culturally they don't always align. So very soft. How do you really ascertain the impact that these people are going to have? On the flip side, we're not doing enough to educate internally. You know, we talked earlier about, you know, being in a position where we can continually disrupt our own business models. Yeah, bringing in new products that satisfy an ever-demanding customer base. You know, ever-demanding experiences. You know, people are buying brands, not necessarily specific services now. They get very attached to an experience. This stuff is happening throughout most industries now, and so we have to build the capability holistically to continue to disrupt and learn and grow. And I don't think we can rely so much on the quick fix, bring in a new director, they'll solve it all type problem. So there definitely has to be a balance struck there.
Okay. We've had a tweet in through Capita who say they're avidly watching, so avidly, excellent, that sounds good. They've also tweeted about one of their own programmes for more junior level staff, which is taking STEM graduates and training them with real world projects. So perhaps that leads us on nicely to the idea: is the problem actually at that STEM level? What is the? Are there enough people coming through?
So for our own organisations and for our client organisations, we see a growth again in like graduate and even apprenticeships. You know, so there's a recent apprenticeship program with British Airways, for instance. So they've started that whole how do we bring in IT graduates again? It had stopped for a long time, so these things are now starting to surface again. British Telecom starting to insource development skills again, rather than relying on outsourcing partners, which is infusing our the graduates coming out of school. But that work-based learning, I think, is critical to this. You know, too much training out there today is 2 days in a classroom, off you go, you'll sort it out yourselves. It's not enough at all levels, not just at the graduate level, but providing real work-based experiences and the necessary feedback loops to these people to consolidate the learning. More and more we're going to have to see people who are owning their own learning and development, not necessarily relying on the employer always as well. And I think there's lots of technology advancements like the MOOCs that allow some of this to happen. But we have to provide those opportunities as employers. So, you know, what Capita are doing there seemed like a very sensible move in this workspace. But we're going to have to provide more programs like that, I think, across industry in the UK.
Now, there's actual figures down here that I noted from the Royal Academy of Engineering saying that we need a minimum, according to them, of 100,000 STEM graduates a year to fulfil the needs of UK PLC, for want of a better expression. We're currently getting 90,000. So, in fact, is this just going to be an ongoing problem, Chris?
I think this is a fascinating area, because I think you take the dilemmas that a single organisation may have around, take for example, the move away from bespoke in-house development of software to more off-the-shelf cloud-based solutions out there. Reskilling an organisation to be able to be effective at that, you need to make a decision at some point to get on that train and to invest in skilling up your organisation. And in part that has to be done maybe even before some of the capabilities you need are even available. You blow that dilemma out and you say, okay, are we investing enough in STEM-based courses, education to go and create the right population? Do we know what we're going to be using them for in this space? Do we know where the biggest challenges are for us next out there? So I'd love to, understand more about the data that's in that space. But I think STEM overall is something where I think we're seeing a resurgence with educational establishments like the UTC now. We've created a partnership with one in Swindon, which is where we're based, to help support them developing engineering talent within the local community. And then hopefully we can build a program whereby we can give them real world business experience, because they really set up their sort of educational structure to behave like a normal workplace. But we can give them real experience in our organisation. We can go to them and we can share some other business experiences so that we can nurture that talent more effectively and hopefully attract not only good talent to this space, but diverse talent. The biggest problem I have is that actually I don't have a problem with the number of CVs that land on my desk when I have an opening. I have a problem that probably 1% of them are female. I was mentioning earlier, 48% of my organisation are female. A lot of the people, though, that are occupying those IT roles have come from business units within the organisation. They've seen what they're able to accomplish within an IT career. So they've come into our organisation and they've flourished. How do we get into the education and school system to nurture talent and get people attracted to careers of this nature from a very early age? Because it's not at university. They've already made their decision by then because the courses are already heavily male dominated. It's not at A-levels. It's not even at GCSEs. It's not at options further back than that. It comes really from inspiring diverse talent to see that the job is not just one thing. It could be a number of different careers for an individual. It could be that business relationship management. It could be that programming. But it's not just that technical piece that we've seen in the past.
So I'd like to pick up on that point, actually. Firstly, the other day I was sitting around the kitchen table and my 9-year-old daughter said, I'm actually not that keen, I'm a big maths person, I'm not that keen on maths is for boys. Horrified.
Where did that
we've definitely got to do
from?
something about that. We've definitely got to do something about that. But I'd like to sort of I think there's definitely something to be done on the education piece in terms of closing the skills gap. But I think there's a really, really easy piece that we can do, low-hanging fruit that we can do right now. So interesting, you said around, I've managed to attract people from the business into IT. So again, we did a piece of research looking at women in IT. And we found that nearly 50% of the women that we surveyed that were actually in technology roles, technical project management roles, etc., didn't have a STEM degree. One of the principal criteria in over 80% of roles that are put out to market is that you have to have a STEM degree. Yeah. Boom! 50% of the female marketplace out. So that's number one. And I think it's really easy. It's very easy to fix that one. It's very easy, and clearly you're able to do it internally.
Absolutely. Yeah. Although I will say, and sorry to interrupt, but I will say that changing my management staff's perspective on that has been incredibly hard.
I know.
When I was saying that I wasn't looking for that STEM qualification, I wasn't looking for somebody on a computing degree course.
You know what it takes?
Why?
It takes a blooming good person to put in front of them, doesn't it?
It does.
There's nothing like a real high performer that you say, here you go. But I'd also like to then come back to the point that yes, it's right for us to be focused on education and STEM education, and yes, it's right for us to be focused on the apprenticeship. But there is a phenomenally compelling statistic that, and again, I'm focused on the female space, but there are 500,000 professional women that are actively looking to return to work. And these are women who have over 10 years experience and are highly qualified. 50,000 of those have worked and graduated in STEM. They've been out for a period of time, on average 3 to 5 years, and they're actively looking to get back, but they are struggling to get back because they don't have up-to-date skills. Now look, we're all investing in apprenticeship programs. We're all investing, well, not all, some of us are investing in apprenticeship programs. We're all investing in graduate programs. Why aren't we investing in returner programs? You've got, I mean, some companies, I mean, we're working with quite a few of them, are investing in returner programs, and you've got a group of incredibly talented individuals who already come pre-packed with that business relationship management skill and 10, 15 years of experience in business. So I put it out to the world out there that actually, you know, yes, we should be focusing, but you know, David Cameron going out to, you know, offering X number of whatever, you know, overseas and focusing on the apprenticeship schemes, I think we've really got to do something about enabling organisations to tap into that talent.
Yes. That sounds like a minimum of 5 years worth of making up for the shortfall, if it's 50,000 women that have got STEM.
Yeah, but then you think about it, so that's 50,000 with STEM, and of that, our survey says 52% of that 500,000 would like to retrain. So imagine if we've got 50-50 split of our current technical female population, of which only 50% have STEM, you've got 50% with languages degrees, you've got capabilities within that broader 500,000 that could fill your skills gap.
And so this is one thing I would just like to add. You know, the STEM topic has grown over the last few years, right? But then also we have the creative curriculum topic having very much raised its head over the last few years. Why does it have to be so polarized? You know, technical skills are going to be required in lots of jobs. We need business people who understand technology way better than they do today, and we need technologists who understand the business way better than, but we kind of polarize these things into STEM, not STEM.
Yes,
okay, it's probably not that helpful, because, you know, a language graduate, I tell you what, we're not very good at internationalizing a lot of our websites and apps. Okay, what are the customer experiences of people getting on an iPad and having those translated into multilingual devices? Yes. You know, there's all of these other creative industries that we require in the technology side of life that we kind of need to blend together way better than we are today.
So if we broaden it out from STEM, Richard Tate has sent a question in for us. Do the panel think that universities are adequately preparing graduates in 2014? So STEM or not?
So what, just going back from my own personal career, I did a computer science degree. The most valuable part of my computer science degree was the year I spent in industry. Right. Okay, that was the most valuable thing, seeing what the world really wanted. And yes, there was a lot of theory, like that I had to learn about programming languages and databases and all of those sorts of interesting things. But actually, this is the world of work. It's the, you know, the politics that's happening in the workplace. It's the how do you get on well? You know, how do you build teams? And I haven't seen the evidence that the universities are really doing that side of life. So I think what we're doing is producing people who kind of get the theory of it, but are they ready for the workplace when they come out? And I'm not convinced that I'm seeing the evidence of that part. But then that's the onus on the employer to integrate them well, and maybe it's also integrating you know, returners in the same way, because people, you know, it's harsh to say, but there's almost an entitlement to work, but actually there's a real skill gap between the knowledge that these people are coming out with, and then are they ready to actually produce great value for employers.
Stuart Leader has tweeted in, knowledge transfer partnerships are a fantastic opportunity for recent STEM graduates. I should know I am one. That's one of our future IT leaders, if Stuart will pardon the pun there. Yeah. Thoughts on that? Knowledge transfer partnerships.
Do we know what one is?
I think the relationship between universities and business. Am I right in that?
Let's ask Stuart to tweet in again.
So actually, that plays to a point that I was going to follow up for with Philip that I've over the last few years engaged with a number of different universities over what they're doing to try and understand their approach to how they're building out their syllabus. To your previous question, my experience hasn't been great, unfortunately. It's a mixture of not necessarily understanding that business paradigm that needs to come into play, that anybody that's going to take on a career in this space also needs that sort of capability. And I agree. I was also on a degree that had a year in industry, which made a huge difference. And we recruit interns in particular from that space. But then there are some exceptions, and one that I've recently been working with is the University of Essex. I've been hugely impressed by the teaching body there and the people who are leading the business school as well as the computing school about the approach that they're taking, because they are overcoming some of the challenges of integrating new topics into the syllabus and getting them launched as courses. In September this year, they launched a data science degree and a master's in it. And this is fantastic. This is identifying, admittedly, a very specific skill that now the industry is looking for, but it's adapting to those needs. But it's not just focusing on all the technical aspects, because one of the biggest things about data science is understanding the business problem more effectively than anybody has before. So integrating those points is important. But the key difference that I saw with the University of Essex is that people are leading and making the decisions in this space are people that have had very recent industry experience themselves. Because unfortunately there are still a number of universities where you have people who have spent a long and important career in education, but we need to do some of maybe that knowledge exchange that allows us to nurture more talent in that space. We've started to do some lectures at universities from within my department to try and offer something back into this space, but that's only going to scratch the surface. I think we need to do more in this space. So my investment is I'm looking at working with these universities on their syllabus governing boards to identify what we need to implement there to make that difference. But as I mentioned earlier, it's not just about universities. We have to go further back than that as well.
Yeah, and I think just to add to that, I did a piece of work with the eSkills Council last year looking, they've launched a couple of degrees, one very business technology focused, one more technology focused. They've got a number of universities signed up to that, and they're actively looking to figure out how to refresh the syllabuses for the world of work. But these things are starting now, which I find quite interesting. And then if we look at what's happening elsewhere in the industry, look at Udacity, online learning, massive, open, free to do. The reason why they exist is because employers like Google don't think the skills are being produced by the current education system. And so data science is something that you can actually do for free out there now, if you know where to go look. And employers like Google are saying that's the level of capability we want. So there's a real challenge happening within our own university system here. And does it have to be university? Do we have to go further back? Is this colleges? Is this apprenticeships? Is this, and how do we use all of this new technology and new education processes that can help us move forward quicker?
Virginia Powers just tweeted in that at UWE Bristol they work closely with local businesses to link undergraduates with real business situations.
Yeah.
And that would seem to be part of the solution. But let's look, shall we, at a little bit more at what we do with the people in our organisation. So I've got a little question here about skills and certification. What are your perceptions, Chris, on the viewer certification and skills within your business? Do your team members have the appropriate certifications for the things they do? Or?
If I went back 5 years, I'd say very few people had certification. I remember one of the project managers on my team at the time was being encouraged by some of his colleagues to take PMP, the Project Management Practitioner certification. And he said, well, it's a bit like Valentino Rossi, the world superbike champion, taking his cycling proficiency test. You know, I've got a track record.
Wow, he's confident.
Yeah, exactly. He is, but he's good as well. But you know, he had a point to a certain extent that certification on many levels gets people to a certain point, and then experiential development and, you know, the experience that they've had with their, in that case, projects, can then build upon that. So I think it's got a certain place in what we do. Fast forward to today, and we've got we've developed the T-shaped model for personal development for each of the key job roles that we have within the organisation. So, you know, the top of the T being how broad their skills need to be, the sort of vertical line of the T being how deep they go into their particular area of maybe technical or non-technical skill. So now we have recognised, having gone out and worked with various groups, we've got recognised certification that is applicable for each of the levels that we're looking at in that space. We're augmenting it with some higher level ones, because there is a desire for the employees to feel like they're being invested in this space. So I think it has its place. But I would also echo the comment made earlier around what we call experiential development. So I think there was some study done that showed that out of all the work that you can do to develop your skills, to develop your career and personally, 70% of it is experiential.
70-20-10 model.
Yeah,
of,
absolutely.
Of education.
And 10% of it is through specific training that might lead to certification. So it's about having that balance. Let's not treat it as a tick box.
That's exactly
it's
right.
you know, that can help us get to a certain level, and let's build on that.
The problem there is actually most of the training suppliers out there focus on that 10% of the 70-20-10, and actually there's more to be done in that work-based learning area. You know, and the one thing I would say, and it's really great to hear that you've done like a generalist specialist view of, you know, employees and thinking about that, and actually kind of looking at the certification market and thinking about which ones are relevant to you. Not all certifications are made equal. Right, there are many certifications out there in the market space. My market space is the agile market space. They're not really that useful, and they don't give employers, you know, a warm, glowy feeling that this person's going to walk in with the skills and capabilities that they need. You know, so having helped the BCS develop the Agile Practitioner certification, I know that that's a standard that I would be very happy for employers to look at.
Well, it's good to hear.
I know. But there are many certifications in that market space that really, once upon a time, you just had to sit in a class for 2 days.
Yes.
And that's not enough.
And as long as we don't put the certification on as a prerequisite, on as an explicit essential criteria, otherwise we'll get people pulling themselves out, particularly women.
Okay, now I've had an interesting question here, which I think reflects a worry that we might have about modern sort of working practices. Richard Tate's tweeted in with this one. With the normal graduate scheme route, are companies able to retain new generation Y for longer periods, or do they leave early? So you're talking about investing in these people, aren't you? But with the changes in the way that the workplace is,
The experience we're getting is that the graduates coming through now are more mobile, less loyal, for want of a better word, to the organisation. So retention is absolutely tricky. So I think I would say myself and my department weren't particularly strong at the retention of college graduates. We had to change our practices, and to be fair, I think we're still in the process of doing that. You know, not everything's rosy in the space that we're working in. So we're looking at graduate rotation programs to try and demonstrate to them that we're prepared to invest in putting them in different places in the business, because sort of along the lines of what we were talking about earlier, that you might have somebody who goes through education on a particular path, comes out of it with a STEM degree, but actually the thing that lights their passion is somewhere else within the business unit. So I think it's important that as graduates come in, that we give them, and we again invest the time and give them the opportunity to explore lots of different areas.
I'd also like to add to that, I think it's about, in addition to enabling opportunities, it's also around enabling the way in which our jobs are constructed and the way our workplaces are. So we did some research recently around the need for flexible workplaces with the graduate community coming through. I think it was something like 33% of graduates would ideally actually like to work part-time. Between 60 and 70% wanted to be able to work flexibly in a way that suited them. So I think for in terms of retaining the talent, not just at graduate level, but also at our experienced hire level. So experienced hire being those people, it's sort of a terminology in the talent world, being those people who've got 10, 15 years experience under their belt, creating an environment where we can retain our graduates coming through and at an experience level. Flexible working and creating flexible workplaces is a critical component to that.
Yeah. What other innovative approaches could we take? When we were talking earlier, we were talking about David Cameron's scheme of having exceptional talent visas, and he allowed Tech City to become a designated competent body to bring in exceptional talent. But this is mostly entrepreneurial talent, really, and there's only a maximum of 200 a year. So that
the
seems
returner
to be
space. This has got to be the returner space. This is where our latent talent lies in tech.
Okay.
I think perhaps, so here's a nudge for the BCS.
Thank you.
So if where Tech City is the hub, let's enable the through potentially the BCS. This is what we do. I think it's not hugely innovative. I mean, it's not rocket science at all, but it just takes a little bit of thinking and a little few tweaks to process. I think that's where the talent is, and then also looking across our organisations, as you say, there's a significant proportion of people that are really interested in actually changing careers. So let's look at enabling careers across business units.
Okay.
Something that I know some people that I've been working with have looked at, and we've struggled to get support for, is actually experienced employee placements. So taking employees that are within the organisation today and continuing to pay their wages, but place them in Tech City into a particular other environment for 6 months, a year, to get a different type of experience altogether.
Okay.
Yeah.
We've been running those for returners, so internships,
Right.
so internship programs where it's experienced hire placements for women coming back to work and running them through technology.
Fantastic.
Secondments have often been used in larger, more traditional businesses to get some of those experiences, and I think they've been very valuable where I've seen them happen. I mean, there's a couple of things there. Obviously, the Tech City part of that, encouraging entrepreneurial tech leaders is a great idea, but those entrepreneurial tech leaders are going to need the talent coming out of wherever it comes out of in the UK in order to create a Silicon Valley environment, right? So, do we not need to look at how we support youngsters going into a startup community? Money is the biggest problem. So is it about seed investment into the more entrepreneurial places? Is that something government could do more about in order to encourage a grassroots technology-based business that's providing services, and then companies like Intel can then buy them? That's a talent management strategy for the country. Yeah. The other thing I would say is go back to the very first question: where's the skills gap? It's not all about the technology; it's about the soft skills. So how do we develop those inside our organisation? So now I'm thinking more larger enterprise than I am Silicon Valley, and that's pairing. That's taking a business person and a technology person and have them working side by side on a day-to-day basis. I think many of the gaps appear when we're very siloed in our thinking. IT sit over there and they get on and do the programming. Oh, and I'm the product manager and I think grand thoughts. How do we bring those two things much more together? And it's the collaborative effort. So it's not about focusing on any one single skills. It's about focusing on the team and the ability to collaborate much better.
So I'm delighted that you say that, because one of the initiatives that we've been really, really promoting with a different reason for more wanting to promote more senior roles in technology that are compatible for women and part-time. But that collaborative working is definitely absolutely the way forward. I think our roles are getting bigger and bigger, and we were talking about this before we came on live. Our roles in our global organisations are getting bigger and bigger, and we're looking for more and more capabilities in one role, so effectively sort of, you know, multiple people in one, which is really, really hard to find, which is hence why we struggle to find talent. So what a number of organisations are investing in is actually enabling job sharing as a means to get these capabilities together, as a means to bridge the gap between the business and technical. We launched the Job Share project, a not-for-profit platform, a couple of years ago to really promote the use of job sharing, particularly in senior roles actually, where you have different skill sets coming together. I mean, it's really commonplace, or it's not commonplace, we're trying to make it commonplace, but there are lots of really compelling examples of people working in technology. We have one individual working, it could be 5 days a week, it could be 3 days a week, who has real business relationship management experience and skills. And you have the other person working 3 days a week, 5 days a week, who is a real technical expert. And they come together and you have a match made in heaven. And I think that the organisations that I know that are really investing in this way of working are just the exponential outputs. The outputs are exponential that come out of that. So you can look at that on a spectrum of, around here it's two people coming together part-time to work part-time in a senior role, job sharing as we all know it. Up here, collaborative working, multiple people coming together, working in potentially one role or 1.5 roles or 2 roles or in a team, sharing and playing to each other's strengths.
Yeah.
So appreciate those comments, some interesting ideas there from each of you. So BCS, as the Chartered Institute, is obviously keen on getting feedback and suggestions and expanding what we can do. What do you think BCS should be doing in this space?
So the one thing that immediately springs to my mind is obviously the BCS has a heritage and tradition from a very information technology oriented viewpoint. It is why the Chartered Institute was created, so I understand that. But technology is so pervasive now. I think the move to more business orientated viewpoints, you know, product development, service development, and looking at that almost more entrepreneurial digital skills space, I think is something that I would love to see more come from the BCS.
Okay.
I would echo those comments. I think something that I've been looking at is how we could take more advantage of the knowledge and the industry connections that the BCS have. I think you can bring that to industries like, you know, even Intel as a multinational company that's not UK hosted, but we have a UK presence, to bring you guys in to help identify how we can engage with other industry peers and partners to actually carry out some of these activities. It would be great to see, you know, what we were talking about earlier with regards to things like placements and so forth. Maybe they're facilitated rotations as part of something that we work through the BCS. I think activities like that are powerful, and then maybe together we can do something that can influence the next time that the government come up with a plan to either fill this skills gap or to create that leadership talent. Then we've influenced that together. I think that would be the real result.
Okay.
For me, I think there are two things, and I'm sure you probably know more the first one. I think that I think that the BCS have a really a unique positioning and an opportunity to be there both as a central point for the industry to be enabling the returner community and potentially gathering the right practitioners and the right service providers and the right organisations in place to provide a platform for them, and equally to be there lobbying government to be investing and enabling the companies to invest in that talent pool. So that would be my first. And then I think...
That sounded like two, but okay.
It's two sides to that first one. And then my second would be, we touched on how can we keep our graduates coming through, how can we retain our talent, and one element of those is flexibility. And I think that it would be really super to see the BCS doing much more to enable its client community to enable more flexible working practices.
Okay, thank you. Well, that's interesting feedback. I had a little tweet in from Paul Scrivens. Bridging the gap between business and technical. Sounds like we need more business analysts! Exclamation mark.
Business analysis is, I would say the majority of my organisation work in the business analysis space. But we've been working with the IIBA, the International Institute of Business Analysis, and business analysis is changing, it's shifting a little bit. So 53% of business analysts now are operating within the business and only 47% within IT. I would imagine over time, that shift may change again. But this is something that I think requires a huge amount of attention. It's the biggest challenge to overcome that I'm seeing right now is how you are doing that partnership between the business and IT, and who thinks their role is to transform and design how the business is going to operate tomorrow.
Yeah.
I think there can be tension in that system, but there can be huge opportunity and wins from working that close together.
Yeah. The only thing I'd say there is that's a very role-specific suggestion. So business analysis is absolutely required, but is it not through the collaboration between technologists and product managers and business owners and P&L owners to solve that problem? Business analysts is a solution, potentially, but it is the collaboration across boundaries of an organisation that need to be solved. And the role of business analyst is so unclear, so undefined. In some companies we walk into, they're the people who look at databases and where data exists. In others, they're the people who are going to do the process charts. In others, they are the people who are the product experts. There's no kind of standardization of it, but all of those things are needed. So it's how do we collaborate effectively to provide the capability to the business. I'm not going to say we don't need more business analysts, Paul, but I just think that's one answer to that particular problem.
Well, Phil Lim has tweeted in mentioning IT business analysts as well as IT project coordinators as doing that bridging. But again, that's role specific.
Again, we're focusing on individuals to do that role, rather than creating an environment inside our organisations for the collaboration to happen. Because I think that's where a lot of the mismatch, the missed expectations, the failed projects appear when we try to plug all the gaps with a single person.
I think what Philip says is very poignant, because the tweets that you've had are absolutely relevant, but they would naturally come from the experience those individuals have within their organisations and the roles that are fixing some of those challenges for them. The underlying problem is things like collaboration between IT and the business. It's some of those elements that it's role agnostic to a certain extent. There's a responsibility that we all have to it. Every organisation needs to think, who are the right people? Do I have the talent? Do I have the bench strength to be able to address that problem, irrespective of what job they're currently in? And then go and invest in making sure they've got the opportunity to do that, the time to do that, the resources to do that. So, I'm sure in their organisations, that's probably the right thing.
Yes, that's the answer for that.
Yes.
But the underlying problem is absolutely that collaboration.
Well, got a nice last tweet to just finish up on here, I think, from Kelsey McLean. Great idea on facilitated job rotations through different organisations via BCS. So we'll see where that goes. But I think Chris, Sarah, Philip, we'd like to thank you very much for the discussion today. Some lovely ideas come out of that. There'll be further information published on this debate shortly on the BCS website, an overview. There'll probably be a white paper and various other resources, so please look out for that, and thank you very much for your time.
Thank
Brian.
you.